Oh, hello, hello. We are connecting. And we will be welcoming everyone back. Hi, Jen. So hopefully everyone had a good break, was able to reconnect with some of the folks around their superpowers, tried out that speed networking to have a little bit of a one-on-one discussion, and remember to get a glass of water to stay hydrated. We are changing up a little bit. We are going to be talking here. We are a little bit early, so 15 minutes, but we wanted to say, hey, let's give it that extra time. And so I am so ecstatic to have Ingrid talking about a little bit of the history of what she means when she says the end of waiting. So I invite you all to enjoy, learn, and have your own inspiration for this talk together with Ingrid.
Thank you. And can I just ask before we start, Liz, did we put an announcement out that we've moved the session up?
So that's what I'm doing right now. Yep.
Brilliant. Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. As Liz mentioned, my name is Ingrid Wills, and I'm joining you today from just outside of London. And I want to share with you the perspective that I bring today. In my lifetime, I've lived all over the United States as an expat in France and England. So my life experiences are from the global north. I also want to share with you some of my I ams. I am a woman, dual national. I am a wife and a mother. I'm an expat. I am courageous, a nurturer of talent, a business owner, and a women's rights activist. The I am I want to talk with you about today, though, I am tired of waiting. Growing up in the United States, I was taught about the women's suffrage movement in school, and in the early 60s, I watched a resurgence of the women's rights movement. Yes, we had the vote, but now we were demanding equal rights. Women were burning their bras in protest. Well, not so much burning as smoldering and smoking because the fabric really didn't burn. But as I watched the news, I got caught up in the hype and the hope. I believed that moment, all those decades ago, signaled the beginning of real equality. I would have the level playing field that my mother had been denied. I was wrong. So I waited. And years later, I had a daughter and I nurtured her and I told her she could be anything she wanted to be. She took me literally, but I think she heard more she could be everything she wanted to be. So after completing an undergraduate degree in East Asian Studies and creative writing, she went on to do her PhD in quantum astroparticle physics, as you do. And she's now a senior research scientist. Watching her grow up, I remember thinking, things are getting better. My daughter will have the level playing field that I had been denied. And again, I was wrong. Yes, she's been able to break into and work in a predominantly male field. Progress has been made, but we're still far from equal, and I'm still waiting. And as I'm waiting, I find myself thinking, what is it going to take? How can there still be such disparity? I understand that my perspective is one of privilege, and it's perceived from the global north. In my reality, though women are far from equal, we have much more in terms of equality and rights than our sisters in the global south. Before lockdown happened, I visited my own sister when she was an expat in a developed nation in the global south. And I went shopping with her and her husband. But every time she made the purchase, within seconds, her husband's phone would go ding. And I asked her, what is that? She tells me it's a text message from the bank where they hold their joint account. A local branch of a global bank, mind you, mandates that because she's a woman, every time she uses her card, her husband must be advised. Every purchase. There's no similar mandate for her to be advised or any woman in that country to be advised of their husband's transactions. Despite the movement for equal rights starting more than 130 years ago, just prior to COVID, it was estimated that it would take another 100 years or more to achieve equality. And then COVID hit. And just as the virus discriminates against older people, people of color, governments across the globe discriminated against women in their approach to managing the crisis. Without consideration or permission, the role of unpaid carer and teacher fell predominantly on women. I'm extremely lucky to be an employer in the United Kingdom where government support allowed business owners like myself to furlough employees with pay to help mitigate the impact of unpaid care on women. But many countries provided little or no support at all. Women were faced with impossible choices, unrealistic expectations, and forced out of the workplace in unprecedented numbers. Taking into account that recent fallout from COVID on women, new trajectories for achieving equality were calculated. In 18 months, COVID set women's equality back another 25 years. Another 130 years from today is the estimated time it will take to achieve equality. So we've been at this for 130. It's going to take another 130 years. Equality is something that takes 260 years to achieve. And I found myself asking, what am I waiting for? Why am I waiting for change instead of working for change? That exasperation motivated me to do something, and I decided to volunteer to be a delegate for the UN Women UK. It's a wonderful opportunity that came out of the pandemic. Global forums and summits had to go virtual. The elimination of travel time and costs allowed for greater representation, more speakers, more sessions. There were so many sessions, in fact, that the paid UK delegation to the UN Commission on the Status of Women summit, they just couldn't cover it. So they recruited volunteers to attend the sessions, take notes, write reports. In the smaller sessions, we could even participate and ask questions of the speakers. Some of the sessions I attended focused primarily on the global South. And coming from the North, I can tell you it was overwhelming. I thought I was truly informed, and I had no idea or understanding of the heartbreaking challenges facing our sisters in the South. With unbelievable courage, the speakers shared their stories, their reality, and they opened my eyes. They told the joke that if you don't have a seat at the table in their country, that means you're on the menu. I also attended sessions where I had the privilege to listen to young activists, and these women were on fire, speaking with palpable anger and passion, using words and phrases like burn down, tear down the system, smash, dismantle the patriarchy. It was unnerving, unsettling, and I found their language of activism extreme. But near the end of the last session I attended, the final speaker was a woman closer to my generation, the younger woman that had spoken earlier on. And before she spoke, she exhaled this long, deep sigh, and you could feel in it her exhaustion and her weariness. She has been fighting this battle for a very long time. And with incredible calm, she stated that we have tried to fix things within a system for more than 100 years. And that if the current trajectory from today is that it will take 130 more years, we must conclude that the system can't be fixed. It has to be torn down. And in its place, we need to co-create something that is at its very core, from its very foundation, equal. It must be built equal. Her words no longer sounded extreme. In fact, they sounded very matter of fact. And I don't know why her words reached me. She was wearing a lab coat. Did I trust her because she was a woman of science? Maybe it was because she was closer to my age that made radical words sound rational and reasonable when she spoke them. As I listened to her, I thought about how throughout history, men in power, with deliberate intent, have included mechanisms in the systems they created to maintain power over. Mechanisms designed to assign and maintain lesser value for certain groups of people, indigenous people, people of color, and women. And our efforts to restore balance and reach equality are often met with a smug and patronizing response. Go ahead, fix it. We didn't build the system. We don't have the plans. We're not given the tools, but we're supposed to fix it. But it's the existing system's power over that needs to be overthrown. Transformative power is a way to do that. Just Associates and We Rise, two amazing organizations, define transformative power as power relationships that reject the domination and exclusion of some persons by others. I'll repeat that. Transformative power is defined as power relationships that reject the domination and exclusion of some people by others. It grows from respect for self and equality with others and all their diverse identities, experiences, and abilities. Transformative power is power within, our internal power that we need to nurture. It's power too, our collective power with others. It's power with our ability to speak out and to act. And it's power for the power to work for the change that we want. Transformative power is collaborative, it's inclusive, it's empowering. There are only 3.5 months between that 65th session of the UN Commission on the Status of Women and the recent UN Generation Equality Forum in Paris. In that time, the desire to discuss was replaced with a demand for action, a call for a commitment to action, and governments, organizations, philanthropic and academic institutions were called on to make and present written commitments to action. Witnessing those commitment statements, they were made during the opening ceremony. It was inspiring. I was wowed by the power of organizations to create real change. Melinda Gates committed $2.1 billion over 5 years to advance women's economic empowerment, to strengthen women and girls' health and family planning, to accelerate women's leadership. And I thought, what could a company as small as mine do? I accessed the commitment statement toolkit that was provided as a part of the form, and I challenged myself to write a commitment statement on behalf of my own small company. And let me tell you, I was challenged to articulate the what. What could my organization, my small company do to impact women's empowerment? We can't write big checks. What do we do? I was challenged by the scope. Where do we do this and for how long? It took some time, but the exercise was cathartic and empowering. I completed our statement, I hit send, and I changed my outlook on my own power. A company as small as ours could have a global impact. We decided to offer organizations worldwide a huge discount on our services for any initiatives that focus on women's empowerment, diversity, and inclusion. We committed to democratizing access to what we do in the global South by providing our services there at cost. After 18 months of so many moments where I felt so powerless, I reclaimed a bit of my own power. And I know I'm not alone. So much has happened recently to make us feel powerless. The relentless, highly visible injustices that continue in spite of the Black Lives Matter movement, the increase of violence that happened against women during those lockdowns, the burden of unpaid care and teaching that resulted from COVID. And too often we feel there's nothing we can do, but there are things we can do. And in doing so, take that first step and move from feeling powerless to powerful. Over the next few hours, you're going to hear from some amazing women talking about the Me Too movement for Black women, creating allyship, dismantling the system, sounding rational and not radical, and my favorite, Good Girl Deprogramming. I just love that title. Listen to these women. What speaks to you? What ignites your passion, your empathy? Let your emotions rekindle that sense of power within you. Listen to your anger if things they say make you angry. There's power in anger. And then later on today, we're going to reconvene for a power of commitment session. And our challenge to you in that session will be to write a personal commitment statement and change your outlook on your own power. Embrace and nurture your power within, your power to, your power with, and your power for. Thank you. And I hope that that has inspired some of you to have some comments, some questions. So I'm happy to listen to anyone, and raise your hand, take the mic, ask a question in the comments.
Absolutely. So yeah, welcome. We also welcome you up on stage, just like Ingrid said. So yeah, your story, it's just so. Thank you so much. I think this aspect of how are we coming to really acknowledge we have to stop waiting. So the question is, what tips would you give women to empower each other?
Well, one, attend the session later on today, because there's a lot. I have a wonderful PowerPoint that I've gathered from amazing toolkits, and there are fabulous toolkits that so many of these big organizations have put together, but many of them focus on creating large movements. And my takeaway from that session was that I needed to do something much more personal and start small. Especially, I think so many of us are feeling vulnerable and downtrodden after the last 18 months. So just think of any little thing that you can do. And there'll be lots of suggestions. It can be anything from volunteer, if you don't want to attend a protest, fund the poster board, the sticks, and the paint so other people can carry signs. Show up at a protest and just stand behind other women. Stand up for women when they're being harassed and hassled by other people. It takes some courage. One thing that I wanted to share that came out of the recent tragic events that happened in London, where a woman was abducted and sadly murdered on her way home. And that, after the news and the shock and horror of that started to fade, the news started picking up what was going on in a movement that started with women, and they created You'll Never Walk Alone pacts with other women. And they created within their communities pacts that they made with each other to say that if you call me and it's 2:00 at night and you're going home from a bar and you feel unsafe, I will get in my car and drive over to you. I will get on the tube and come walk home with you, whatever it takes to be there. And just even that little commitment, it's what we do as an empowerment league. We stand up for each other. We listen to each other. There's so much that you can do that I really hope you can attend the session later, because there'll be lots there to talk about. Absolutely.
And I think there will be lots there to talk about how do we find that civil courage and go into that vulnerable space. So I really appreciate it that you bring that in, Arini. That's also what we're going to be talking when we're talking about that juxtaposition of vitality, viability, and vulnerability. How do we go into that space? And so I welcome you as we continue to talk through these things. Being vulnerable is an extremely brave space. So how do we go in there? And that's going to be a critical key, you're absolutely right, to help this end of the waiting. So wonderful kickoff to what we'll be now going through in the next sessions. And so we invite you to really, as you kind of think, as Ingrid said, what could be your personal commitment? What could be your personal commitment statement? And we will close out this series of sessions, by coming back to that ask of you.
Yeah, and if I can just, Suzanne put an interesting question about global north and global south, and that's new to my vocabulary as well, and that came out of the volunteer work that I do in connection with the UN. And they use those terms because most of the global South, and they've tried to get away from the terms they used to use were, first world and third world countries, and assign a hierarchy and again relegate certain levels to people that perhaps shouldn't be looked at in that fashion. So there are real differences, economic differences, societal differences, the fact that predominantly in the global North, women, there's much greater representation in government. We're much more financially secure. I saw a shocking statistic today that financial reporting has indicated that on average, a white woman has about 12,000 to 15,000 pounds in savings and invested. And I think that number for Black women or people of color is somewhere between 50 and 500. So it's really a very different economic environment that we're in much of the global South versus global North. So thank you. That's a great question.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Ingrid. We look forward to keeping asking those questions and understanding and how we can continue to build the allyship between us and amongst us so that really that aspect of civil courage gets spread out. So with that, we are going to be making the transition. So thank you. Wow, I couldn't agree more with the emojis. Keep those coming. We are going to be starting up and going over into Cordelia's session. And again, we invite you for each one of these sessions to think about your commitment and the power. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. See you soon.
Yeah.